listen, today is Friday, so on today's Girls Chat, we're joined by an incredible woman who is here to dive deep into the world of red flags. So y'all get ready to engage in a thought-provoking discussion about recognizing warning signs, protecting ourselves, and fostering healthier relationships. Please welcome out Shani Jones.
Where are my ladies?
And welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. We got to see each other
yes,
last night.
Yes, and congratulations again on
a
much well-deserved win.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to you. We were in the same category.
Yes.
It's a tough thing to be in because I think everyone is a winner and everybody should get a trophy.
You are beautifully humble, but when I saw the nominations, I said, Lord, I'm going to go have a good time because I already know what time it is. So I was just honored to be nominated with you and to just have the opportunity to be able to be there and celebrate you.
Well, likewise, and hats off to Women on the Rise. It's such an amazing organization.
Absolutely.
They give such a creative space and space in general for women in the space who are professionals, who are talented, who are brilliant, who are game changers.
And doing great things in the community.
Yes,
as well.
it was so beautiful to see that.
It was a beautiful place to be in and to be able to be in that environment, that atmosphere.
So now I've talked a little bit about us being in the actual pool of nominees together, but tell us about you and who you are. What do you do?
Who I am. Well, my name is Shani Jones. I have a couple different things that I do. I like to say my family's Jamaican, so I do have several jobs.
Love it. Respect. She has several jobs. I love it.
But I'm a speaker, I'm a host, I'm a content creator. I'm also a realtor here in the Orlando, Florida area. And quite recently, I've actually given myself a little bit of a new title just because of a passion that I have where it comes to fibroids and miscarriage. I consider myself a fibroids and miscarriage champion, and I've, over the last couple of years, really gotten into women's advocacy when it comes to their health and all the things that go into that. So it's a little bit of everything, but outside of that, I love to talk to people. I do a lot of interviews. I cover red carpet events. And I just love to have fun.
Well, I know you're gonna have fun because next week you're headed to the Stellar Awards,
so
right?
In about 2 weeks, I'll be headed to the Stellar Awards. They're in Las Vegas this year.
Yes.
And I can't wait to just meet and see who I'll see in the carpet. It's great to see people I've talked to before. They start to recognize you after a while.
Yes, of course.
And then it's fun to meet people that you've never met and just have to go shoot off the hip and just have a great conversation.
And you have the energy to do all of that.
Thank you.
So today we're talking about red flags. I know you've heard about red flags.
Absolutely.
So we want to dive in a little bit and just give our viewers some insight about the red flag. It seems like the season of red flags, right? So how can effective communication help identify and address potential red flags in a marriage or a long-term relationship?
Ooh, that's a really, really good and a very loaded question.
It is.
I think in terms of relationships, whether it be marriage or not, because I think a lot of times people sometimes neglect relationships that aren't just marriage or that aren't just romantic relationships. There can be red flags even in family relationships. There can be red flags in friendship that sometimes we don't recognize or don't pay attention to. And I think a lot of times it's because the people that are closest to us, at times we wish the best and we believe the best. So it's hard to see whether there's red flags there or not.
It's so true. So we are given our family, but we choose our friends, right?
Correct.
What are some warning signs or red flags to watch out for when you're choosing a friend? Because it is a choice.
Yes. I would say one of the things that I've realized and recognized over the years when it comes to friendship, and even when I think about last night and, you know, the motto that Women on the Rise has is that we complement, we don't compete.
I love
and
that.
I do feel like one of the red flags is when you have someone who sees that you're either going for something or knows that you have a goal and they either talk you out of it or they're quick to kind of throw either shade or doubt towards it. Or they aren't as happy for you as you think that they should be. Those I found over the years have been red flags because it could be that someone has some sort of jealousy that has been hidden behind the scenes, or it could be sabotage that you may not know or recognize, or sometimes it can just be an insecurity that they have within themselves and you realize that that person's really not for you the way that you would want them to. So I found that that is a huge red flag, and thankfully in my adult years, I believe that I have a good circle of people around me that's not the case. But it can take time. And sometimes that can be the same with families as well.
It's so true.
And even, again, in relationships.
I mean, come on, Cain slew
yeah,
Abel.
hey, let's get biblical with
Y'all
it.
didn't want to hear that, did you?
Let's get biblical with it. But that is so true.
Why not? I mean,
That
it
is
happens,
true.
right?
But I do think that's one key red flag. And I mean, there's so many, but that's one that I would really tell people to watch out for.
Yes. Now, we've talked about friends. Let's talk about romantic relationships.
Yes.
What are some indicators or red flags that just may suggest a person is not suitable for a romantic partner or a lover?
Now, I am very, very grateful. I'm married to an amazing man, Thaddeus Jones, that it'll be 5 years in August.
Really? Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And one of the things that I really love about him is that he supports my dreams. He supports my goals. He knew when he met me that I was a very ambitious woman. He knew that I would have multiple things that I would have my hands in. But I remember prior to meeting him that I would date men who initially made it seem as if that was something that they liked. Oh my gosh, so many people know you and so many people love you and look at your personality. And then I realized as I got further into those relationships that they would try to dim that light. They would try to dumb it down. Oh, well, you're going to somewhere else again. I need you to be here. Or why is this person coming up and talking to you? Or why do you seem to have so many things going on? And I would say someone who And I get it. There's personality differences. Some people are extroverts, introverts. So some of it can be that. But I would say that when you have somebody that really seems to kind of dull the things that you're trying to do, or seems like they're trying to stop your progress, or doesn't really understand fully what your goals are, what you want to do, or only wants to keep them to yourself or isolate you, those can definitely be red flags when it comes to a relationship.
That is so true.
And I think that's something definitely to look out for when it comes to that.
So if you find someone headed down that road and they don't stop, what do you do with those red flags?
Oh, as far as if it's somebody that I'm in a relationship with?
Yes,
or,
not even a intimate relationship,
Right.
but a friend. Like, what do you do when you find out, oh my God, okay, that's the
Yes.
third time I've seen that.
Correct. So I'm a woman of prayer.
Amen.
So, and I
Hallelujah.
also try to be a woman of discernment. I do believe that, and at the same time, I have a very tender heart. So I'm one of those people that's like, let me give him another chance. Let me give him another chance to see. But I think after a while, when you've given 1, 2, 3 chances, especially if it's something that has caused some sort of detriment to you,
Yes.
whether it be personally or whether it be in your confidence or your esteem, that maybe have a conversation. I've had to do this in the past to really find out, okay, maybe I'm reading something wrong. Maybe something's off with them, or maybe there's something I might need to recognize. But if I've had that conversation, I've given those opportunities, then sometimes relationships need to be severed. And it's not even about saying, all right, we're not going to be friends anymore.
Right. It's
Sometimes
just
it's
like
just kind of fizzling out.
distance,
A little bit of ghosting.
Yes, a little ghosting.
A little bit of, you know what, I'm not available
Yes,
right now.
yes.
And I think people eventually get the point. And sometimes I've found where that has allowed that person literally to fizzle out of my life. And there's sometimes I found where that person was really dealing with something that they had to work out within themselves. And even years later, I've had people who I was friends with before that we weren't friends for a while, and they worked on themselves, and those relationships were able to be rekindled. So you never know.
I love that. So don't end it. Just give people time to find themselves and then come back around, quite possibly.
If that can take place, because like I said, there are some where, listen, it was great. You were in my life for a season,
Yes.
a reason, a purpose, and maybe that season is over, and
It's
that's
time
okay
to
too.
move on.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
So this next question I want to ask you about is about leadership, about management. What are some indicators of poor leadership or management practices that should be considered red flags for employees?
Oh gosh, that's a really, really good question. I would say in terms of leadership, now I understand as a leader, you are supposed to give instruction, you are supposed to give direction, hopefully you're given delegation. But I do believe a part of a leader's job is also to bring out the best in the people that they're over.
Yes.
And I do think that there are times where some leaders are so busy wanting to be number one that they don't give the opportunity for people to be able to learn and grow and even make mistakes. So I would say that if you find yourself in a situation in employment where you don't feel that your leader really is kind of behind you and wants to help you grow and spur you on, or is understanding of some of the mistakes you may make, especially if it's not something that causes complete detriment to the company,
right?
Then that may be something that you need to realize and wonder, okay, am I on the right team? Am I in the right environment? Am I in the right job even? I think those are some of the things, because I do feel like leaders, they do have a responsibility. They have to keep things
Most
going.
definitely.
They have to keep things moving. But I do think they also have a responsibility to their employees to help them grow and flourish and hopefully be able to make advancements and get to the next level.
Most definitely. I agree with you on that. So can you share a personal experience or a story where you recognize red flags in a work environment?
Oh gosh. Whew. So this one is interesting because it actually happened in 2020. I was working in an office where, and many times this can be the case, where I was the only me, so the only one that looked like me.
We understand, yes.
I was also the only one who was in the age range, so everyone was a lot older than me. So there was a lot of political differences. And of course, in 2020, we know not only were we in a pandemic, but there was a lot of racial injustice going on, a lot of things that we were kind of experiencing. And I'm not a fool. I understand the idea of microaggressions. I also understand the idea of being, quote unquote, the token. So even though I knew that my abilities, and I knew they respected what I did, because a lot of times I was the person to kind of help get us out of sticky situations and be the voice and do those things, I also understood that I was always told, well, you're different. You're a different kind of Black person. So during that time, I realized there was really very much a change in me in terms of how I was seeing certain things that were happening in the office. And I remember needing, for the first time ever, because usually I work through things, I get things taken care of, but I literally asked my supervisor at that time if I could have just one day for a mental health break, because I felt it was right after everything happened with George Floyd. I had flooded myself with the news, and I was sad. I was like feeling it physically.
Right.
And I said, okay, I just need a day, because we had a very busy season.
Yes.
And I literally sent an email and I said, if it's possible, could I just have this one day? Let me know everything you need me to get done. I will take care of it. I will get it done for you. But I'm just asking for this one day. But I gotta go,
yes.
And they waited until like 11 o'clock that night to answer the email, and I sent it earlier in the day. And we were working from home at this time, and everyone was kind of doing what they needed to do. So that was one thing, because I said, typically, when you need something done, you turn it around, I respond to you. And then they addressed all the things they wanted me to do, but didn't address the actual day I asked for. So I had to respond and say, great, I'm glad I know your expectations, but I still haven't found out if I have permission for this one day. And, yeah, sure, just kind of let me know what day it is. And I remember seeing that, and if I'm being quite honest, that was the day I realized, I said, okay, I think it's time for me to leave corporate America and just focus on real estate and focus on my LLC, because I realized that this particular environment is probably not going to serve me in the way that I need to. And while they respect what I'm doing, they don't possibly respect me personally and understand what I'm going through. And that was a huge red flag for me, because I realized that once you get to a certain point in your career, you need to be in an environment where you feel safe, where you feel comfortable.
Most definitely.
When things are going on in the world that you don't feel like you don't have the support that you need.
Correct.
And I get it.
We spend a lot of time at work. People spend a lot of time at work.
More time sometimes than we do with our families.
Than you do with your families. I mean, I understand that. I did go through that as well. The year that Obama was elected, please forgive me, President Obama was elected. I went into work and I was the only me there as well. And I know that it was a quota, but I also was good enough to be there. So they totally respected that I could do what I do. But that next day when I went in, the room when I walked in went silent, and someone said, so how do you feel about the new president, your new president? And I was like,
wow.
The stock market crashed. I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And I had to stay in that room for like a certain amount of time. I could not get out of that atmosphere. And I just kind of like ignored it, because I knew that it was going to cause a huge argument.
And I bet
with
in that
my
moment,
colleagues.
You realize that what I think a lot of people don't realize, especially for Black people, is you can't show your true feelings in that moment. So I'm sure you had to put on a happy face.
I did.
You had to be cool.
How do you feel about your new Black
president?
president?
You had to be collected. Correct.
It's history. It's amazing. But my God, really? Was that the right thing to say? And welcome back to the Sisaundra Show. I'm sitting here with Mrs. Jones, and we have been talking about red flags. Now, we've covered a lot of areas from relationships, family. Now we're going to talk about parenting. How can parents differentiate? That's a hard word, y'all.
That's a word.
Differentiate. Okay, it's out. How can parents differentiate between typical childhood behaviors and red flags that may indicate a need for further evaluation or support? Red flags in children.
Right. Now, I'm not a parent as of yet, but I am expecting. So
I
will hopefully know more. I am.
Hey, you heard it first right here.
You know, literally, I plan on sharing publicly like tomorrow. So you have heard it first.
Thank you so much.
So I don't know personally yet. However, I was blessed with extremely amazing parents. My mom was a social worker for several years. She also worked in the school system. And she also worked with, what is now DCF at the time was called HRS. So she worked with a lot of families with children who were abused, neglected. So I was able to see firsthand just how she maneuvered that. And I do think that for a lot of parents, some of the red flags may be seeing whether their child either isolates themselves, sometimes seeing if there's maybe some sort of like learning disability or something that seems to come up that doesn't seem normal. Seeing if they lash out all of a sudden out of nowhere. Sometimes also listening to some of the things that they're saying. You know, kids pick up on different things and we don't realize how much they're paying attention to us, how much they're listening, how much they're being influenced by what's going on around them. So sometimes you don't know if they've been in an environment where something may or may not have happened that you don't know about.
Correct.
And I would also say, take the time to talk to your children. I believe we're kind of getting out of an older school area where it was like children are to be seen and not heard. It's important to see your child and to hear them. Please listen to them because you may find out something that you didn't realize. They may say something that you didn't know. And I do believe that when you foster that relationship with your child, you'll always have that. My mom talked to us from a very young age, probably even before we wanted to hear certain things, whether it be about sex, whether it be about strangers, whether it be about self-esteem. And to this day, I feel like I can talk to her about anything.
That's awesome. That's
so I do think those are some of the things that parents can hopefully watch out for and be able to do in their
being able to
relationships.
nurture and foster that relationship.
Absolutely.
So talking about children, what are some warning signs that may suggest neglect or lack of emotional support from a parent? So we've spoken about from the parental side of the child, but how do you see a child and realize, oh my God, they may be going through something at home? What are some of those red flags?
Now, this is something I have a little bit of experience with only because I've worked with youth and young adults from when I was a youth, whether it be in church environments or whether it be in the community. And I've had the opportunity to mentor a lot of kids from different time frames. I'll never forget there was a young lady that I mentored who I still am close to this day. And when I started mentoring her, she was in middle school. And her grandmother was taking care of her. She was her main caregiver. She was amazing. And she allowed me to come and pick her up and do things with her. But I remember for the first couple times that I would go and get her, she would not speak. So I literally would pick her up. We'd go out to eat. I'd take her somewhere fun. But it was either yes or no answered questions that I could get an answer to, or there was like no communication whatsoever.
Wow.
It wasn't until a couple months, because I was kind of wondering like, okay, am I doing the right thing? Like, should I continue? But I knew she wanted to be with me. She just couldn't talk.
Wow.
And eventually one day when I picked her up, she gave me this like 4-page letter, and it was her entire life story. And I realized that there had been so many things that had taken place. There was a reason why she was living with her grandmother. So many different things that happened in her life. And I do think that sometimes giving children the opportunity to be able to come to you when they're ready to share things, and also not giving up on them. I think sometimes people don't realize that a child may be standoffish because they don't know if the person that they're going to share what they're going to share with, they might be able to trust them.
Correct.
And then I think another part is the complete opposite, where they're super loud, super, kind of acting out, looking for attention. Sometimes that can be a fact that, okay, they're not getting enough attention where they are because they're in this room and they're going out of their way to kind of make a way for you to pay attention to them. So sometimes that can be some red
the
flag
other
as well.
end of it as well.
Correct.
Oh my goodness. I remember a story of my girlfriend. Part of her workforce requirements is that she has to be a mentor. So they go into different schools and they mentor their children. And she was the mentor of this beautiful young lady. She'd take her out to lunch, do different things. And she wasn't opening up to her as well. It's kind of the same situation. And you're kind of like, hey, talk to me. I'm here. I'm your friend. And she did pretty much the same thing. And you just remind me so much of the power of a pen. When you give a child a pen and some blank paper, and they start telling you what's going on inside of their heads, you can't help but sit up and take notice. So she showed my girlfriend her journal one day, and then she found out that her mentee was being sexually abused at home. And it's just like these young people, you never know. When we take the phrase, I don't look like what I've been through, they don't look like what they're going through. And my heart breaks to see them in those situations. But I'm so grateful to people who like yourself and my girlfriend and even my organization, Find Your Voice, that helps girls find themselves and
Absolutely.
to find their voices, to speak out and share things like that. Now, we've talked about everybody. It's time to talk about self.
Oh, yes.
We're going to talk about these self red
important.
flags. Can you share personal experiences or stories where you recognize red flags within yourself?
Oh gosh, red flags within myself. Ooh, that is, I'm trying to think of what story I could possibly share or what story I could possibly tell. I'll say this. What I have recognized, or what I did recognize at some point in time, is that I give a lot of grace to people, and I'm naturally an encourager. I believe that's my gift of the Spirit, is to encourage people. I am the hardest on myself. And one of the red flags I realized is I one day was paying attention to the things that I was saying to myself. A lot of times people do not understand the power of negative self-talk.
Yes.
And it can be
It's so
something
true.
simple. Looking in your mirror and just be like, oh, I do not look good today. Oh my gosh, what is wrong with you? And I noticed that there was a time when I was doing that a lot to myself. And even though people around me were telling me how amazing I was, or, people were congratulating me on things I may have done, I realized that there was something within me that just wasn't quite right where my head was concerned and how I was speaking to myself. And I think sometimes when there's certain things that you're trying to achieve, certain things you're trying to do, I have very lofty goals and lofty dreams. And sometimes when you don't feel like you're making this mark in your head, it's not anyone, no one else necessarily knows that you can down yourself.
Yes,
And I've had
easily.
to learn that wherever God has me in the moment He has me is where I need to be. And I have to find a way to be content in that, not give up on what I'm striving for, but at some point in time, it'll either come to fruition or He'll give me something different. But that doesn't necessarily mean I need to beat up on myself or talk crazy in my head to myself about those
Exactly.
things.
That is so true.
So I think that's probably one of the biggest red flags is what are you saying to yourself? What are you allowing yourself to believe about yourself? And really making a difference and paying attention to that. I know people sometimes think it's crazy to think about what you're thinking about, but that's important. Really
it's
think
really
about
important. So spending time alone with
Correct.
yourself
Journaling.
is so important.
We
Making
talked about
sure
this
you
writing.
journal. Yes.
Yes, all of those
It's just to
things.
get it out of your head.
Correct.
It's been such a pleasure sitting here speaking
It's
with
been a
you.
pleasure
Thank
being
you
here.
so
Thank you
much.
for
You are
having
just like
me.
a well of knowledge. Yes! Hello, everyone. If you are at work, at home, y'all drop everything and tune in because it's time for the Sisaundra Show!
Yeah.
Listen, I'm just kidding. Don't y'all get fired. Don't drop everything at work. Listen, speaking of fired, y'all.